Welcome back everybody. If you're new to the channel, you probably don't know this, but this is my first playthrough of Pokemon Sun, except I'm only using a grass-type team. With that being said, this is part 5 of said run, so I left a link in the description that gets you all the way to part 1 so you can follow this from the start. If you're comfortable with starting midway through, then the rules of the run will also be on display in the description. Now, before we begin this video, there's something really quick I want to mention. I've been seeing a recent increase in both views and subscriptions in my most recent videos, so I want to thank everyone for this, and I hope we can continue this upward trend for the times to come. Now we can start the video for real. Last time we finally reached Alola Island. We talked to Kukui in Malie Garden, then went to the library to check up on a book with Lily. She decided to stay back, but we have an island challenge to complete, so on we go towards Route 10, where Kukui waits for us. Upon reaching Route 10, we talk to an old lady who asks us to retrieve some lost Pokemon. I'm not much for doing fetch quests, but I decided to help. I mentioned this back in part 2 or 3, but I just love how the shadows from Pokemon coming at you from trees match the Pokemon that appears in battle. So here you have Skarmory and Fearow. Turns out, retrieving the lost Pokemon just got me a Never Melt Ice and some money. It wasn't exactly what I was expecting, but I can complain. The quest was quick and I'll probably need the money later. I like how there's an NPC that can heal your Pokemon here. It's kind of a redundant spot to have this here, as Malie City is on the previous screen and I can already fly by this point in the game. However, I'll say what I've said before, this is just another one of those moments where the game holds your hand, as a couple steps after this NPC are 2 Skull Grunts, and of course they're here to cause trouble and battle. After 2 very quick battles against them, Kukui comes over to us and we get the first mention of a league. He gets very secretive when we ask about it, but don't worry, we'll soon know more about it. Kukui goes on to deliver another one of his punchlines, and a couple seconds later we're at the top of Mount Okulani. Kukui wants to show us something, and as we approach him, a neat little cutscene plays where he shows us the tallest mountain peak in Alola, Mount Lanakila. He then explains more about the Pokemon League. See, the concept of a Pokemon League is something new to Alola. So new in fact that the league is still being built, and Kukui's word choices are interesting, as he says he'll be the one establishing it. I didn't really pay any mind to this when I was playing, and the reason for this will be uncovered soon. We then get told that once the league is ready, we'll have to battle the Kahunas. This is the most interesting part, as I had been wondering for a while now why Kahunas weren't stronger. Remember that back at the start of the run, back in Melee, people were saying that Hala was one of the best Pokemon trainers in all of Alola, yet we were easily able to defeat him, so something had to be going on. This means that by the end of the game, once we reach the league, we'll have a rematch against Hala, Olivia, and 2 other people we have yet to meet. Kukui leaves, we find Samson in a corner who talks us about Minior, then we head for the big blue building. We get introduced to Molayne, who is said to be the one managing PC boxes here in Alola. Molayne isn't the captain, as he says a person named Sophocles is, but to determine whether or not we're ready for the captain's trial, we have to battle. Molayne starts off by sending a Skarmory, and I remember battling one on Route 10 and taking some time to defeat it. So I quickly switch for Shrooms, I use Sleep Powder, then switch to Funny Hat so I can set up Swords Dance. Once my attack is maxed, I use Slash, and while I could have defeated it if I used it one more time, I use Leech Life instead, in an attempt to defeat it and heal up. Although I don't defeat it in one try, the damage I sustain isn't big and I'm able to reduce its health to 0 on the very next turn. Molayne then sends a Metang, which I quickly defeat with Petal Blizzard. The same then happens to his last Pokemon, Dugtrio. Another quick battle in the bag. Molayne states we are ready for a trial, and after Kukui says he's not the Masked Royal, both leave and I finally enter the observatory. We finally meet Sophocles, and the first thing I notice is his shirt. I love a good callback, and you can't go wrong with a Game Boy and a link cable. Sophocles doesn't like to beat around the bush, so he starts explaining that he created a machine that is able to produce a sound that people can't hear but Pokemon can. Thanks to that machine, he'll be able to call upon the totem Pokemon. A minute later, Sophocles says that this will actually be the first time he'll be using the machine, and so our trial now begins. I like how the lights go out and then we have to pass an audio quiz. I can't say this is difficult at all, to be honest. Like I just said, this trial is an audio quiz, and after correctly answering every question, we have to battle a Pokemon. And after a while, we finally get to the last question. Answering this one correctly makes the totem Pokemon Vikavolt appear. For the first time, a totem Pokemon gets a boost to all of its stats. Because I couldn't change my team setup, I have to send out Boots first. I start off by gauging just how strong Vikavolt is, so I use Stomp. While it doesn't do an enormous amount of damage, I can't say it's all that bad either. Vikavolt goes for Bug Bite, which does quite a bit of damage though. It then calls for a Charge-a-Bug and the next turn begins. Because I'm faster, I use Teeter Dance, confusing both my opponents. Unfortunately, Vikavolt doesn't hit itself and defeats Boots with another Bug Bite. My team isn't exactly fully healed, so I hesitate for a second on who to send, but I ultimately decide on Shrooms. Because Totem Lurantis had an ability that negated all status ailments, I assumed the same would apply to Vikavolt, so I start by inflicting sleep on Charjabug. On the following turns, I take the advantage that if Vikavolt has any electric type special attack moves, those won't be very effective. And I'm saying this because of Vikavolt's high base special attack stat. So of course, I'm already assuming that the Totem Pokemon will prioritize using physical attack moves, much like Bug Bite, to defeat me. That being said, I spend the next turn just lowering Vikavolt's attack with Strength Sap, which also heals me whenever I lose health. I end up being paralyzed, but nothing I can't handle with Strength Sap. After a back and forth where I can't seem to make both Pokemon fall asleep at the same time, I ultimately manage to do it and switch over to Grovyle. Vikavolt wakes up instantly, but thankfully uses Charge. But I also seem to be having quite a case of bad luck, as Charjabug also wakes up and paralyzes me. I then try to set up Swords Dance, and I get lucky again as I don't get paralyzed once during my setup. And not only that, on the third use, I tough out Vikavolt's hit and leave with just 1 HP left. But if you thought that was it, not yet, as I try to use my Z move on the next turn, but because I'm paralyzed and Charjabug has used String Shot before to slow me down, I'm the last one to move. Not to worry though, as Friendship proves once again that it's the strongest thing in the game and I'm able to tough out both Vikavolt and Charjabug's moves. Of course, this luck comes at a cost, as I get fully paralyzed. But this wouldn't be a back and forth if I didn't get lucky again right after, as Friendship lets me get rid of paralysis. Now, I could have gone with the Z move again, but for some reason I decided to use Acrobatics instead. I'm not able to defeat Vikavolt in this turn and Grovyle eventually faints, but I'm pretty sure this Totem Pokemon can't heal, so I send out Funny Hat. I use Breakneck Blitz on Vikavolt to be 100% sure I defeat it, then I get paralyzed from Charjabug. But thankfully, I don't get fully paralyzed and I slash for a Friendship critical hit and the battle is finally over. This battle easily shows just how broken Friendship can be, as a lot of stuff happened here. From getting rid of paralysis to avoiding moves, and don't forget toughing out moves as well. If I knew from the start that it would become such a big thing, I would have probably refrained from using Pokemon Refresh, but it was my first playthrough, so I let it slide this time. Sophocles gives us the Electrium Z, and interestingly enough, because Moline was captain before Sophocles, he gives us the Steelium Z. We now have to go back to Malia Garden and give Kukui a very familiar mask. While battling the trainers in this area on my way back, I learned Cotton Guard with Cloud, replacing Fairy Wind, as this move doesn't deal any damage at this point in the game, and setting up my defense could prove useful later, even more so when we know that Cloud is still unevolved right now. Needless to say, we defeat all trainers and head back to Malia Garden. We reach the garden and Kukui is seen talking with 2 Skull Grunts. Then, a new character makes its debut in the game, Guzma, Team Skull's boss. A conversation ensues from this where Guzma belittles Kukui, but the latter isn't fazed, and ultimately says that if Guzma really is as strong as he says he is, he should battle Aiden. Guzma asks us why we bother with the Yalan challenge, to which no better answer could have been written here, as we ourselves are still figuring out what comes after all this. A battle against him eventually starts, and for the boss of Team Skull, I was definitely expecting a Kahuna-like entrance, but no, we get a very basic intro, just like other grunts and such, which I thought was really disappointing. Now, as Guzma sends his first Pokemon, Golisopod, 2 things. First, this Pokemon has a good 125 base attack stat, so I need to be extremely careful. Second, I don't seem to be as overleveled as I initially thought I was, as Golisopod's level is nearing mine, which is absolutely fine, I do require a challenge. So because I know this Pokemon is strong, I start off by using Teeter Dance, but to my surprise, Golisopod goes for Swords Dance. As soon as I saw the move, I was like, oh crap, this isn't good. So I immediately switched strategies and went straight for my Z move. Thankfully, Golisopod's ability, Emergency Exit, makes it leave the battle if its health gets reduced from over 50% to under 50%. Guzma then sends Ariados. I thought this Pokemon would be really easy to defeat, so I start by using Stomp. First turn, Ariado flinches. Good. But second turn, after Stomp, it uses Fell Stinger. And wow does that hurt. If it hadn't flinched on the first turn, Boots might have fainted here. I'm able to dispatch Ariados on the following turn, forcing Golisopod back into the battle. I go for Stomp on the first turn, and thankfully Golisopod shows a priority move, so Boots is able to negate that thanks to its own ability. I'm then safely able to defeat Guzma. This battle was surprising. Guzma uses Pokemon that can definitely dish out some damage. I'll need to be very careful on future encounters. As the Skull boss, I have to assume I'll have to battle him a couple more times throughout the game. As Guzma and the Grunts leave, Kukui then gives us the Z Crystal for Decidueye. We give the mask back to Kukui, and what a coincidence! He asks for Lily, and there she is. If you watched the last part, I mentioned how Acerola never really introduced herself, yet her name appeared. Well, as soon as Lily shows up, she introduces Acerola to Aiden. Kukui leaves for the Pokemon League, the girls go shopping, and we need to go to Route 11 towards Tapu Village so we can get on to our next trial. We defeat all trainers on Route 11, then someone sees we have the Electrium Z and opens the way to Route 12, then says that the next trial would be Ghost-type themed. Now, where have I seen someone that fits that theme? As we take our first steps into this new route, Tapu shows up and gives us the Mudsdale Pager ride. Not long after getting the new ride, as we're battling the trainers here, Grovyle levels up and tries to learn X-Scissor. We were able to see just how strong this move was when Lurantis used it on us, so of course we replace Acrobatics for it. Boots also tries to learn Captivate, and while the concept could be interesting, I can't rely on the fact I need my opponents to be male for this move to work, so I pass up on it. We eventually defeat every single trainer on the route and head for Route 13, but two reasons led me to go back. First, I read a sign earlier that showed me two ways, one here and the other to a power plant. Second, I quickly noticed that my main objective was steps away, which means that not only the other area isn't where I need to go, but it could have TMs or items I could be able to use later. As we reach the plant, we meet Samson again, and this time he talks about the Alolan Diglett, gives us a Lure Ball and leaves. I talk with all the NPCs here, and I was about to leave, but I found a hidden timer ball behind the red pickup. I thought there might be other items around, so I quickly hopped back on Stoutland and started searching. And after just over 18 hours, I stumble upon my first Sunstone. I quickly used it on Cloud, and finally it evolves into Whimsicott. Now I can finally say that my team is fully evolved. Well, you know, except Grovyle. You know why. So, after I got this stone, I asked myself if I could have gotten Cloud to evolve earlier. I could have missed the shop, or a hidden item somewhere, so I went to Bulbapedia to check. Turns out there are only 2 Sunstones in the entire game. Well, for me at least. The first one is the one that I just found. The second one would have been in Haina Desert. But not only do we never go there during this run, I would have only been able to get it after becoming champion. The other ways I could get a Sunstone would be with Pokepelago and with the pickup ability. But first, I can't use Pokepelago, and second, no Pokemon I could catch would have that ability. Anyway, we need to carry on. I quickly check out Cloud's new improved stats, and I noticed that it's now the fastest member of our team. This could come in handy later if I need to set up some defense or lower an opponent's attack stat. We reach Route 13 and a few steps in, Hao shows up. As we're talking, Gladion also appears and starts talking about protecting Cosmog and not knowing how Team Skull learned about this Pokemon. Something fishy is definitely starting to happen. If we start putting certain pieces back together, we can understand a few things. At the start of the game, Lily runs away from Ether Paradise with Cosmog in her bag. In Diglett's tunnel, coincidentally, we see both Ether members and Skull grunts. Now, midway through the game, Team Skull is also looking for Cosmog. There's no way there isn't a link in the middle of all of this, but we'll soon find out exactly what that is. After making sure I talk with everyone and check everything, I eventually reach Tapu Village, and we soon meet Hao again. He says we should be closing in on Ether House, where the next captain will be, but more importantly, he says that the construction workers right there validate what the professor said about the league being built in Mount Lanakila. I couldn't believe it, but upon talking with this trial guide, she says the league is still under construction and sends me back. I was confused. I'm certain that when Kukui showed me Mount Lanakila, it was quite far away, and there's positively 100% no way I walked that far to get here. I really thought the league would be on the 4th island, and there I am, wondering what this optical illusion is all about. But I'm getting sidetracked, we need to get going. I eventually reach Route 15 and make it to Ether House. I save, call it a day, and come back on the following day. We enter the house, have an easy battle against the kid, then Acerola comes in after us and says she's the captain. So remember what I said back in part 2 about Olivia obviously being the kahuna of Akala Island? Well, I can say the same about Acerola. I mean, the first time I saw her, I actually thought she would be the kahuna for this island. But a hint from an island guide earlier immediately made everything clear. We exit the Ether House and Lily is being harassed by a skull grunt who's after whatever's inside their bag. We confront him, and after another very quick battle, Acerola asks Lily to head inside while we go back to Tapu Village, where the way to the next trial lies. We find Acerola close to the Poké Center, and she says her trial site is further ahead on Route 14. While battling the trainers here, Shrooms tries to learn Spore, and of course we want to learn it, as Sleep Powder only has 75 accuracy, and we all know how accuracy truly works in Pokemon, so if anything, this move is an upgrade and a blessing. We get the TM for Shadow Ball here, and that reminded me of something. Ever since I evolved Cloud, I completely forgot to check which moves I'd be able to learn now, so I take this opportunity to check. And look at that! Cloud is able to learn Psychic. This is truly great, as Psychic is very effective against Ghost-type Pokemon. This is now Cloud's moment to shine. It's unfortunate that its special attack stat isn't anything great, but it's the only thing I can currently count on to deal more damage. We make it to the abandoned supermarket and Acerola explains how this trial works. We have to take our Pokefinder and take a picture of the totem Pokemon. Remember back in part 1 when I said the Pokefinder would have a use later in the game? Well, this is it. This is the one time Pokefinder is mandatory in the entire game. We get a bunch of tips and warnings and we're sent on our way. As soon as we step into the supermarket, the trial starts. And here's what I need to do. I have to navigate through the supermarket and get to the back, where I'll find access to a back room. While navigating, I'll see random stuff moving, and upon seeing those, I'll have to fire up my Pokefinder and snap a shot of whatever Pokemon is causing the abnormal phenomenons. I won't go into details here, I'll just say that I had to battle a Ghastly, a Haunter, and a Gengar. And while I had Shrooms as my first party member for Ghastly, I quickly switched to Cloud when I saw what kind of damage Psychic did. Not even Gengar was able to tank it and was immediately one-shot. We reach the back of the supermarket and a click is heard, indicating the door opened. We enter the room and the Pokefinder starts itself. A Pikachu can be seen inside the supermarket while on the hunt for the totem Pokemon. And as soon as the Pokefinder opens in here, we are faced to a wall with multiple pictures of Pikachu. It literally takes me around 5 seconds to understand what's going on. I turn around and voila! Mimikyu is our totem Pokemon. If that had been it, I would have been fine with it, but it really had to talk, didn't it? Creepy, dude. The battle starts, and much like Vikavolt, Mimikyu gets a boost to all of its stats. So Mimikyu starts with Play Rough and it lowers my attack, but that's alright because Psychic is a special attack move. I use Psychic and I completely forgot Mimikyu's ability. If I had remembered, I would have started with another Pokemon. Oh well. Mimikyu calls for a Haunter and the second turn starts. Mimikyu goes for Play Rough again, and this time I got luckier than normal, as I don't believe it was Friendship that allowed me to tough this out, but I still live with 1 HP. I go for Psychic and... oh. Mimikyu is Ghost and Fairy type, so it's actually not weak to Psychic, but rather Ghost type. Well, crap. So first, I should have had another Pokemon on the first spot, and second, I should have taught Shadow Ball to Cloud. Cloud faints and I send out Shrooms. On turn 1, I use Spore on Mimikyu, and of course this Pokemon has a Lumberry. Because why not? Because I know I'll get hit with another Play Rough on the next turn, I choose to go for Strength Sap. And just like Cloud, I'm able to just barely hang on after Play Rough with 1 HP left. Shroom's ability kicks in and paralyzes Mimikyu. I'm also luckily able to avoid being hit with Hypnosis from Haunter, which allows me to hit with Strength Sap and fully heal myself. On the next turn, Mimikyu uses Mimic and learns Strength Sap. It kinda sucks, but then again, if I play my cards right, I shouldn't have to worry about this at all. Haunter uses Lick and goes to sleep thanks to my ability, then I lower Mimikyu's attack once again. I get into a back and forth with Haunter and Mimikyu, but eventually, although I get paralyzed from Haunter's Lick, Shroom's ability also paralyzes it and I'm able to not only lower Mimikyu's attack to its minimum, but also its accuracy. And I'm also able to confuse both before switching over to Funny Hat. It takes a while, as I get put to sleep midway through my setup, but I'm then able to fully raise my attack with Sword Stance. I then use Leech Life on Mimikyu, but it doesn't deal nearly enough damage to be a viable way to defeat it, so I try using Petal Blizzard. Well, color me surprised, as I didn't expect the move to just one-shot both of my opponents. I guess that's that, huh? With this battle done and over, we leave the building, Acerola congratulates us and gives us the Ghostium Z. After giving us permission to catch Pokemon in the old supermarket, she eventually leaves and that'll be it for this part. So I could include a bit more here, but I think the next 5 minutes will be better off included in the next part, which is why I'll stop for now. Anyway, if you haven't seen it yet, I did a solo run with a Miltank in Pokemon Heart Gold, so you should definitely check that out. And if you're really interested in solo runs, I'd recommend you also watch how I theoretically managed to beat Pokemon Red with a Magikarp. That's right, thanks to math and probability, and a lot of persistence, I was able to theoretically prove that a legit Magikarp should in fact be able to beat the game. So if you wonder how that's possible, something should be popping up on your screen right about now for you to check. With that being said, thanks again for watching, and thanks to all newcomers as well for watching and subscribing. I hope you enjoyed watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. My name's Grovyle. Thanks for watching.